Okay, so I did the author study project on Thomas Nelson Page. Here are two pictures of him and what he looked like. He was white, and he was a white author during the time of the antebellum period and when slavery had just ended. Um, and slaves were, he was actually, his parents were slave owners. So he pretty much grew up around them, which you will see throughout the story of Marsh Chan. But let's dive into things. Obviously by me. The works we're going to discuss is The Land of the Spirit by Thomas Page Nelson, The Negro, the Southerner's Problem by also Thomas Page Nelson and Marsh Chan. The first two are ones that I found myself, and the last one is the one that we discussed in class during the beginning of the semester. The Land of the Spirit is, there's a picture of it right here. He wrote it. It is a collection of essays and reflections. Page gets into the cultural and morals and values in this piece of work. He blends tradition and his views. It collects land to the people and explains rural South, lost and the lost cause narrative. Um, it's a collection of essays and reflections, as I said, that explore the themes of social identity, spirituality, nostalgia from the antebellum period. Page dives into cultural and moral values he associates the South with being, blending romanticized depictions of its traditions and his views on religions and social order. Um, the essays emphasize a sense of divine providence in Southern life, connecting faith in the land to the people. Page idealized the rural South as a place of virtue, simplicity, um, also spirit, often contrasting it with what he sees as materialist, um, and moral decline of the modern urban society. Throughout the book, Page's writing reflects his commitment to the lost cause narrative, which is at the bottom. Um, last bullet point. This work, Lost Cause, is like portraying the South as a rich, spiritually wise, and morally better than others, despite the historical challenges that it's gone through. Um, and it reinforces his mission of keeping the South and its heritage and its values and all of that staying within each other. Um, and then next we're gonna dive into the second one, which is the Negro, the Southerners problem. Slaves were better off not free and didn't know how to self-govern is kind of like an idea that you get from this reading. There will be many prejudice in this period of time, which still to this day there are a lot of prejudice on certain things, so that hasn't fully gone away, but it was really bad against the blacks back then. Lost cause ideology comes up again in this one, and lots of post-war struggles um are somewhat due to the freed slaves and the policies that were enforced. Um, this prevents, I said it shows the view that he has on slavery after the Civil War. He was white and he advocates for a different approach at managing slave or not slaves but African Americans, arguing that they were better off under slavery and didn't really know how to self-govern since they never had to. Um, his work reflects the racial prejudice during this time and the lost cause ideology, which makes the antebellum South seem like a better place than it really was and romanticizes it. Um, Page attributes the struggles due to the emancipated slaves at the time and all the policies during Reconstruction, um, which are harmful not only to the blacks but also to the whites at the time. He asserts that segregation was and social order was honestly necessary, even with white supremacy. The book is an artifact, obviously, in this picture that is shown. It is very old, as all of this time was, but it shows like inequality during like the rise of the Jim Crow Act, that type of area. Next we're gonna dive into Marsh Chan. Here's a picture of old Virginia, Marsh Chan. Um, that's where the story came from. We read it in class, learned a lot about it. It also goes along with the lost cause narrative. It's really a monologue of a man that was enslaved, and his name was Sam. Um, this story had a lot of dialect, so it's like true, like, or we don't know that it's fully true, but it's coming from an actual slave and it's his language, which the dialect for me can kind of make it a little more difficult to understand, but it is how they truly talked. Um, it highlights the relationship between a slave and his or her owner. Um, it is a short story within a group of stories. It does bring out that lost cause narrative of the American South. The former slave's name is Sam, and he recant like reimagines and re gets us comes not comes up with but tells the story of his life and the tragic love. Like he loved his master and had this great love for his master, unlike most people, which is his master was Channing, and this is from before the Civil War. And he is nostalgic. He shows a side of slavery that most people do not, because he is like, I think my slave owner hung the moon, and he's just a great guy, even though honestly he probably wasn't the best, but in his eyes he was amazing, this great guy, his friend, everything. And that's how he tells this story and his perspective. Um, he's a no, it's this story from Sam is he's like a noble gentleman devoted to his love, Miss Chamberlain, and their relationship is obviously complicated because of disputes and pride, but he remains steadfast in his feelings throughout the whole time. The narrative, it happens in the Civil War, kind of. When Marsh Chan, he fights bravely and he ends up dying on the battlefield. And it is very sentimental of the antebellum South. It presents a highly idealized relationship between individuals and their owners, slaves as in their enslavers, and reflects a broader effect of the pre-war society as more honorable and not just it was all bad. The Southern nostalgia and all surround the lost cause theory. And then how they all connect is one thing is the romanticize of the antebellum South and Marsh Chan and also Land of the Spirit. He idealized the antebellum South and as a place of honor and harmony. Both works paint on they paint the picture of plantation life and how they have to be loyal between slaves and their owners, and they ignore the harsh real realities of what actually happened throughout slavery. Um, the Negro is, or the Negro, the Southerner's problem relies on the romanticized past to argue that African Americans thrived under slavery and that it wasn't such a bad thing. And after the slavery ended, they didn't really know what to do with themselves. The lost cause ideology, all three works really honestly go back to that. It glorifies the South and casts the Civil War as a tragic event rather than that is noble, and it's a conflict rather than a fight to end slavery, honestly. Marsh Chan embodies this as he is heroic and he dies and sacrifices his life during the war. The Land of the Spirit portrays the South's resilience after the post-war struggles, and the Southerners' problem, the Negro, is Page uses the ideology of segregation and framing them as necessary for preserving the South and social order and moral. Um, Paternalistic view on race and society, Page consistently presents a view of race and relations. In Marsh Chan, there's shown through the loyal but perseverant character of Sam, whose perspective reinforces that idea of enslavers, people that enslave you or the owners. The Southerners' problem expands on this because it is advocating for white supremacy and segregation and keeping them separate for the fact that the African Americans can actually benefit from that. The Land of the Spirit ties its paternalism to spiritual and moral themes, and Page's perspective on the Southern society, nostalgia and resistance to modernity. Across all three works, Page resists the social and changes that are going on or brought about due to the Civil War, and Reconstruction and things being built up. And in Marsh Chan and the Land of the Spirit, both show a loss of Southern tradition and values and rural life, while the Negro critiques the modern race's policies and the old ways and structures of things. They all kind of just tie in together, and the same author wrote them, so that kind of obviously helps. But yeah, this is what I did mine on, and I think it was a very good learning experience. And thank you.